Good afternoon, everyone. Can we have the presentation? Oh, great. So, next one. So, I'll be talking about the, oh, sorry. Oh, yes. So, I'll be talking about institutional print on demand. A brief introduction about us. So, we started off as a photocopy and a printing business based out of Delhi University. Our pedigree has evolved from liquid copiers to laser printers to multifunctional devices and then high-speed copiers and then eventually to a web printing machine. But inherently, we are digital printers at heart. So even if I were to say mostly, I would say around 8% of our annual turnover comes from conventional sources. Rest all is digital. Then we have worked in the fields of academic printing, trade printing, institutional printing for nearly 30 years. My dad before me, and then I have taken over. Originally, we were a purely commercial printing establishment. Book printing was a very small part of our business. What we started off in book printing with thesis printing and institutional printing for Delhi University, which has now evolved into Inkfinity, which is a pure digital book printing establishment. We, in a short span of 9 or 10 months, we have done over 1.5 million books digitally. Okay. So digital printing is mainly in three parts: sheet-fed laser printing, sheet-fed inkjet printing, and web inkjet printing. I have experience about in all the three. So in sheet-fed laser printing, the quality is beyond excellent, but the turnaround times are higher because the capacities are high, and then the cost of print is too high. In sheet-fed inkjet printing, your capex is low, your opex is also relatively low as compared to laser, but then again there is a problem of capacity planning. When we come over to a web inkjet printing, even on the basic machine, you have a capacity to do close to 500,000 impressions in a day when run perfectly. So web inkjet is future of book printing for short run and medium runs. Okay. So I'll do a hands-on, and if you feel it's not interesting, we can move on very quickly as well. So moving over to inkjet web printing. How inkjet web printing works? The basic question that comes is paper management and job planning for inkjet printing. Now, as all of you know, the varied book sizes, the most common book sizes are your 5.5 by 8.5 inches. Then you have the crown size 7.25 by 8.5 or 7.25 by 9.5. And then you have your regular letter size or A4 size. So this is a quick overview of how we impose on an inkjet press. Now my press is a 432 mm print width, out of which 4 mm is gone for the machine's original mark. So we get an effective 428 mm in printing. Letter size, as you all know, is 216 mm. So if you look at the first imposition, we take the binding edge in the gutter margin so that during trimming, we can get the maximum size of the book. For 5.5 by 8.5 inches, we keep it 3-ups on a reel of 17.5 inches so that the grain direction remains. Then we have a special scenario of printing crown size and semi-crown size books. In that, we print 3 books in the grain direction and 4 books against the grain, which is not recommended, but we inform the publishers before that because it saves close to 15 to 20% in paper cost. And yes, the market is demanding cost reduction even in digital printing to this extent. Sorry. Then moving over to job scheduling. How job scheduling typically works in a digital environment. As Ajay very correctly said that we can print almost 2 lakh impressions per hour on some of the very advanced presses like HP or Prosper. But how do we schedule jobs? Your main 3 components in job are the paper. It can be map litho, inkjet coated, bulky art paper. You have the size, which is the cutoff. And to some extent, yes, and grammage of the paper. So inherently, when I'm printing a letter size book, I would not like to incorporate printing of a demi size or a crown size on the same reel or within the same plan. So all this has to be planned. So yes, effectively we can give a particular output, but when it comes to job switchovers, it is time consuming. It takes nearly 10 to 15 minutes for the job switchover if reel switch is not required. If reel switch is required, then it takes almost up to 30 minutes. Then moving over to output management. So for us, output is managed in mainly two parts. One is you get a slitted output in case of 8.5 inches by 11 inches. My machine comes with a single slitter. So you can directly take it to the post-press operations. Then you have 5.5 by 8.5 inches. So this is inherently printed as one sheet, then cut on a guillotine, and then it goes to post-press. Same goes with these books. With these books, there is a very peculiar challenge that might come should any of you install it. That is the direction of the print, because one stack that is placed incorrectly and your entire stack is gone. Moving over to binding and finishing. So I have a single clamp binder for doing oblong books, and I have the WB2500 for doing 6 clamp, for doing our regular perfect bound books. Now, the thing with perfect binding is managing of loose leaf output is not as easy as it seems. But as I said, we are a pedigree of digital printers. So we have worked with only loose leaves in our life so far. So it's relatively easier for us than managing a single stream output, which is a folded output. But hands down, I would believe that a folded output would be better option for offset printers because they're used to it. Okay, moving over to a very challenging aspect of digital printing, which is labor upskilling. So normally what I have observed in a normal press, an employee starts off as a helper. He starts learning the processes. Then based on his acumen, he evolves into a slightly evolved helper or a machine man and so on and so forth. But with digital, there is a very niche skill that the operator needs. That is presence of mind and operational knowledge of computers. Without that, you cannot operate a digital machine. And when you incorporate imposition and everything, then what you are looking for in a person who's operating a digital machine is a mix of your machine man, ink man, and a CTP operator, which is a very tough skill to find off the shelf. I'll explain the basic workflow that we are following as a press currently. We are still in the very new phase of this business, so we are also evolving. We receive a job. Typically, the job card contains all the information. If not, then a person from our team connects with the publisher or the production team of the publisher to get the details of the job. Then we have the file management process, which inherently means some of the publishers are comfortable with us storing their intellectual property and us managing them, because on the busiest of days, we sometimes need to do 400 to 600 SKUs in 24 hours. So management of 400 to 600 SKUs just in terms of data is beyond imagination until and unless you have actually worked on them. And then these days, I'm sure international publishers don't face this issue, but Indian publishers, they don't have any set naming convention present in their system. So they don't, you have any XYZ book, then there are 3 versions of that book to be supplied to 3 different schools. And there is a very, very small change in the name. It's a difference of plus, pad, and whatnot. So it's very easy to mistake which book needs to be printed and which one doesn't. Then after the file management process, our part is divided into 2 parts. We do cover printing to ensure seamless binding or post-process operations. We do cover printing before we print the books, because printing of books is much faster as compared to printing of covers, which requires a lamination or any other added process. Then that goes into our binder, either a center stitch book or a bound book. Okay, we currently inherently do not have a capability to do section sewn books off the shelf. How we have to do it, we print sheets with sections, fold them manually, get them section sewn and then bound, should the requirement be there. But so far, I would say around 95% of our books have been loose leaf bound, and we haven't faced a single complaint where the binding has opened. So kudos to Sajid and Bindwell for making such an excellent product. Then we have the packaging and dispatch. Now, why this is important is, I talked about 400 SKUs. Now, those 400 SKUs do not belong to 1, 2, 3, or 4 customers. On the busiest of our days, they have belonged to around 15 different customers. So it's very easy for a press of our size to confuse one delivery with another. And it's intellectual property that we are dealing in. So one publisher's good reaches someone else's. That's a nightmare for us. So that is a part which is very closely monitored by me and the management of the. Then we come to a very interesting topic which I'm sure people know in conventional methods, but in digital, which is waste disposal. Inherently, you are printing a book block. In digital, if you've got a print run of 100 books, we'll print 100 books. We won't print 102 or 104. That gives us accountability as well, and it helps us keep our wastes in check. But what happens if a book gets wasted? Would anyone like to take a guess? What happens if the machine does not, if machine tears up a few of the pages? It can easily be done, it's a rotary cutter. What would we do? We scrap that book, but how do we fulfill the short quantity? Do we send 99 or 98 books? No, we are brainstorming. What should we do? What should we do as a digital printer? That's an open question to the audience. Two copies more, yes. Perfectly. So that's one thing that we do when this particular thing happens in print. Now, what if there was an error while feeding it to the binder and 2 copies got damaged over there? Your print run is over, you don't know if the same paper is running or not, you don't know when that cutoff will run or whatnot. How do you complete the short quantity over there? No one? So we have sheet-fed machines for that. We print the books at almost a 50 to 60% premium, and we fulfill the order in the same cost. So that is a cost that no one builds into their system. Then, waste disposal. Now, a book got damaged. That's intellectual property. I cannot just throw it away. We have to shred the book. And in some cases where contractual printing is there, we bundle up the books and we send it back to the client. Because in case of offset, if a sheet is getting wasted, they still need all the sheets to make up a book. But in our case, it's a book block that's wasted. So the entire book can inherently be copied. But that's how we've been doing it so far. I would say that not even a single book has gone out of our factory that a publisher can say the intellectual property left the premises of Inkfinity. Okay, before I move over to use cases, so in today's session, our esteemed publishers pointed out a very introspective topic of digital rights management, as I would say, data security and digital rights management when we are managing the intellectual property for publishers. So as Inkfinity, I can say that we have a partner who is IEC 27000 certified for printing secure documents for Indian government and others. So what we plan to do immediately when I'm back is we plan to leverage that knowledge and incorporate into Infinity's processes and perhaps get an IEC 27000 certification on the way to ensure that our systems are in place. Additionally, since we are doing intellectual property management for a lot of Indian publishers, so we do have some processes in place. They just need to be documented for everyone to know. And in that, it comes what needs to be improved upon, what needs to be changed, and what is redundant, and then what needs to be incorporated further. So I believe that is something that each and every organization would have to do at one point or the other to ensure that intellectual property does not go out of the purview of the entire chain of whoever is handling the rights. Okay. Any questions so far before I move on to use cases? Anyone? Please. Oh, no, I have cut sheet toner as well as inkjet. Anyone else? I'll move over to the use cases. Okay. So, please.
Jumbled up kind of a job where you are, how do you ensure that you are actually removing the last page, because it's a manual process at the end of the day. So page number 1 to page number 100. This is a completely manual process where somebody actually counts till, in the sense, sees the page number and takes up 100. How do you ensure that not one page from the other book block is coming here, because it's a stack kind of a
So you are talking about loose leaf sheets, so that when your book block is ending at page number 100, the next page number 1 of the book does not enter the previous book.
You're using it as in a guillotine, right?
In a guillotine. Oh, in a guillotine we use two processes. One is we insert an end paper after each and every book block, or we have a team who is well versed with segregating book blocks now. It's a manual process. It's a completely manual process. So the second imposition, it has to be there. This can be automated to some extent. With the coming of my new press, we'll be implementing that's a 660. So we'll be able to print 4-ups. So we have asked Ajay ji to install another slitter so that we get a 4-up output. How efficiently we can print using that still needs to be checked. So that was a very good question, because that's a problem we have faced at one point or the other. And that is a very inherent problem in trade publishing, where you have two titles. One title is just with the book name and the other is the inner title with the publisher info on it. Anyone else? Okay. Moving over to use cases. Okay. So coaching institutes, it's a very interesting case study. Coaching institutes inherently used to print quantities in bulk, 3,000 books, 5,000 books of each of their title and store it in their warehouses. Then came Corona. Most of their stock got eaten up by termites, because they don't control it they don't store it in a climate controlled environment like most publishers would be. To them, it's just cut off stock. As soon as the admission is done, handing over the kit to the student, and they very rarely need to store it for extended periods. Then another thing that we faced with coaching institutes was vernacular inventory. A coaching institute inherently cannot foresee whether Hindi would sell more, or Tamil would sell more, or Telugu would sell more, or Marathi would sell more. So how do they manage that inventory? Either they print in thousands, and we are talking about when a person is paying 2 lakhs or 3 lakhs to a coaching institute, they want the study material first thing on the first day of the orientation itself. So that's like 2 or 3 days, or maybe even within the 4 days, they have to have that study material. And sometimes the print runs can go up to 500 and 1,000 books and 21 titles. So one of the case studies is that they have a set of around 2,100 pages divided into 16 books, and they want 500 copies each of those 16 books in a span of 3 days. I would proudly say this is a case study of Mr. Rajesh of Pay Enterprises, who's managing it. Hats off to you, sir. It's very difficult even for Inkfinity as an organization to do what you're doing. Then we have another use case of current affairs. Now on digital, current affairs are more current than ever. We talk about a break-even point between offset and digital. We've always focused on the cost aspect of it. Never has anyone thought about the time aspect of it. Inherently, when a month's current affairs are published, if they're published on 20th of Feb, that's a 100-page book and you need 10,000 copies, the earliest that any printer in season can give it is 5 to 6 days, any conventional printer. If someone can do it without that, in less than that, That's very good, but that's the typical time frame it takes. So it takes 6 days for the books to reach the inventory of my client, and then another 5 to 6 days for it to reach the student who's actually going to read it. So that's a difference of 12 days. I don't think your current affairs are that current anymore. So what we did was we print all the 10,000 on our Texco. We charge a premium for that, but we deliver 5,000 copies the next day and the remaining 5,000 the day after that. So inherently we're delivering 10,000 copies in a span of 2 days. And the extra charge is mainly for the cover printing that needs to be done on digital, which is way more expensive as compared to offset. Then another very interesting use case is customized books. So what used to happen, from my knowledge, I might be wrong, what used to happen in initial days was customized books were inherently customized covers. The book block would remain the same, the cover would have information of the particular school or the institute, and then this would be shared. It's like what Sajid ji said happens in Kota. What happened later on was that the inner page would get replaced by a publisher's page specific to that particular school, or maybe the first 4 pages got replaced, but the book block remains same. With the advent of digital book printing, each and every school can have a completely customized content as long as the publisher is willing to make it for them. They charge a premium, but yes, the school can design their curriculum on what the core values and what the focus of the school is upon. Then we have institutional printing. Again, a very interesting example. I would take the case of, let's take the case of a Delhi University college. This XYZ college, it prints syllabi. So typically when you go to an offset press, you have to print either an 1100 run or 1500 run or 2000 run to make it cost economical. But does any of you think that each and every individual college has that many admissions? I would say any medium or a small scale college would have admissions between 600, at max 800 to 1000. So how, and you never know whether the same syllabi is going to be used next year or not. A lot of factors, global factors, local factors, government changes the curriculum. What happens then? You completely dilute that stock. So this, and then not only that, annual reports, a very interesting case study. Typically, for a very large organization, they might be printing annual reports in thousands. But let's be honest, I don't think there would be even 40% organizations in India that need to publish their annual reports in thousands. So what do they do to keep the costs marginal and have their publishing done? That's where digital printing kicks in. Question papers, an extremely interesting case study. What used to happen in coaching institutes and all these agencies who conduct examinations, the question papers were inherently printed 15 days or 20 days or a month in advance, and then packed, stored, and dispatched. So you have 20 days and the entire chain where your content of the question paper can be leaked. And it's a very controversial topic as well. With the advent of digital printing, we are doing this for an institute. If the examination is to be conducted local, if the examination is to be conducted on 30th of the month, we get the files at 5 a.m. on 29th. And the exam is conducted on time, each and every time. So this is another very, 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 very vast area that can be explored. And from what my understanding says, question papers and answer booklets is one of the largest, how should I put it, is one of the largest print consumers in China. I think the discussions that I had with a couple of printers back in China, they've moved almost 95 to 100% of their question paper and answer booklet business to digital. It's all done on web. Then you have security printing. It's a very niche market. Inherently, it's just a single machine that can print immense amount of volumes in a day. So you can lock up your machine room and give it to the organization that wants security printing to be done and adhere to each and every of their standards. Your systems are out of the loop of the internet and whatnot, and you can adhere. It's become very easy. How it used to work before this in terms of cut sheet, you would need to typically have a setup of 5, 7 or 8 or 10 or 20 machines to do security printing, which one of these presses can do. We did security printing for UP police recruitment. That was close to 35 million impressions, out of which 20 million was single side. And we did it in a span of 6 days. And this was almost 15 days after my press was installed. So here I'm talking about the capability of a Chinese press against our mental blocks that it's a Chinese product. They're still so reliable that 15 days after installation, I was able to print that much volume in a very, very short span of time. So these machines are reliable. We simply shouldn't discount them based on that they are Chinese. Okay. Some of the strengths that we hold as Inkfinity, we have very stringent processes to ensure on-time deliveries. We have a TAT of around 72 hours for most of our deliverables. I'll discount the very large contracts that we get that include immense publishing. But we have a TAT of 72 hours, and very rarely have we exceeded that. And even when we have, it's because of the environmental factors. We have the capability to handle 400 to 600 SKUs. I'm not talking about one book model. I'm not talking about extremely short runs. I'm talking about you have 400 SKUs, 20 to 100 copies each SKUs we can deliver in a day. We have the capabilities. Practicality is a different topic altogether. We have tailored solutions for customers' printing requirements to maximize cost benefits. For example, a publisher gives me an order to print 8 of their titles, 2,000 copies each. That's very doable on offset when it comes to costing, but time is also a factor. Say I gave them 3 days. How do I reduce the cost for them? Apart from my book block, what is my other major cost? Anyone? My cost for making the book. Apart from the book block, what is my most major cost? No. My book block takes care of paper wastage, everything. Apart from book block, what is my most major cost in digital? Postpress is a cover. Inherently, if you have to print a single side cover, including lamination, the cost difference between offset and a toner-based machine is in excess of 100%. There are many digital printers here, and they can object if I am incorrect. Typically, the FASMA, a click charge that you pay, you can get a cover printed on offset for that price. So we give a tailored solution where we have partnered up with a couple of presses. We get the cover printed over there, and we print the book blocks here, we bind it at our setup, we package it and ship. That saves a huge amount of cost for the publisher. If I'm talking about 8 titles at roughly 4 rupees and 2,000 books each, that's a 64,000 rupees saving done. Maybe more, I might be wrong in the calculation. Okay, we have intellectual property management. I mentioned for a couple of Indian publishers, we are doing intellectual property management. The versioning, the naming convention, that's a huge headache, but you have to give the edge over the competitors. Okay, the next one is very limited to a couple of presses currently. Conventional was a method of centralized production. The more number of machines you have at a centralized place, the more will be your production capability, the easier it would be to manage the operations and more quicker turnaround. But digital is a game of service. So how do you provide service to a client who's say 3,000 kilometers away from you? So rather than increasing our capabilities only in one city, we plan to have a decentralized approach. So we have a new setup coming up in Bangalore in near future, and we plan to give decentralized production to all of our publishers through that. Then strict protocols for piracy and intellectual property management. Another area where we are working on along with our web provider is that we are working on trying to build a logging for the machine. So inherently you can log which book title was printed and how many copies of it were printed, and should a publisher ask for it, we can share that data and extrapolate that data to them for them to ensure that yes, if we said that we are delivering 800 copies to you, 800 copies were delivered. Even if 802 were printed, we should have some way to log that yes, 2 were wasted or 2 extra copies were supplied to them. Near-term vision, Ajay ji already mentioned. Our mono has reached Navashiva port today, should be up and running end of September first week, and then Bangalore machine has been ordered, and we plan to have the setup operational by around December. That was all from my end.